History has been an integral part of our society and helped scientists give more meaning to their discoveries. With each artifact found, scientists have advanced in their research about all the phenomena in our world today. Recently, a historic river known as the Euphrates has been drying up, and science has been observing the river to know the cause of this anomaly. While conducting their research, a terrifying discovery was made on the drying river's bed. What did the scientists discover? Can this discovery be a reason for the river's drought? Join us as we explore how the Euphrates River dried up, with scientists making a terrifying discovery at the bottom. The Euphrates River is one of the oldest rivers in our world today. Along with its twin river, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers surround their flow around an area recognized historically as Mesopotamia, or land between two rivers. This region has been known to be home to many ancient civilizations, such as the Babylonians, Sumerians, and Akkadians, the most recognizable ones to have lived there. In our modern day, these rivers come from the Taurus Mountains of southeastern Turkey, where tons of alpine snow melt into the river. From their source, they flow through the plains of Syria and Iraq before emptying into the Persian Gulf. Lakes also flow into the river, and rainfall is one factor contributing to the river's mass. The river basin is situated in multiple climatic regions, from the Mediterranean to a hot, dry climate. In the upper part of the basin, rain and snowfall ensure up to 3,500 millimeters of precipitation every year. In comparison, the lower part of the river receives low precipitation of almost 60 millimeters. Now, the Tigris and Euphrates river system faces low water productivity, with climate change threatening the river's water systems and the life of its inhabitants. As one of the historical rivers known even in the Bible, the Euphrates River has been one of the longest inhabited areas of the world. But over these centuries, the river system has changed drastically. During their research, archaeologists discovered that the water courses have changed, showing signs of historical periods of drought, flooding, and desalination. Once again, it's beginning to run dry, with areas that used to be a source of life for humans and animals now becoming arid lands. The river flows across Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, with each riparian nation providing a substantial amount of water that flows into the river. However, Turkey stands as the primary distributor. Since the river's history, it has been used for several purposes. Even today, the Euphrates River serves as drinking water for the local drinking population, irrigation for agricultural development, industrial applications, and recreation. Because of the importance of this river, the three riparian countries strike a deal for the proper utilization of the river. This shows that the river is essential for the welfare of all neighboring countries that the water surrounds. In the 1960s, Syria, Turkey, and Iraq began to investigate harnessing water resources. They needed to increase their use of the rivers, which led to modernized water development projects built on the Euphrates River. At the project's commencement, most water development projects were only done to curb flooding regularly on the rivers. Shortly into the flooding projects, they ventured into hydropower and focused more on drinking water initiatives. As each nation developed, the population's thirst for the use of water increased. As a result, competition for water became a problem. This made Syria and Turkey build dams against floods and serve as backup for droughts. With each construction, competition between the countries became hotter. Flood projects in the riparian nations were hastily converted to irrigation projects, and hydroelectric power plants were also not left out of the equation. With the construction of these projects and power plants, demands increased further because they became significant drinking water sources. The draw on the water was made more intense by the natural evaporation that occurred whenever the two rivers crossed arid plains in Iraq and Syria. Also, the development of dams on the river exacerbated water loss. Although these countries had similar objectives, security, provision of water supply and sanitation, food, and hydropower energy, but despite the similar objectives, they processed their plans on a national scale, achieving the objectives by combining resources just for their own populations. This caused enough tension in these countries that almost resulted in aggression. The situation became worse when each state took a more nationalistic direction due to the Ba'athist Party's centrism in the Syrian and Iraqi Ba'athist regimes. As a result, multiple dams were constructed from the mid-1960s to the 1970s. Among the dams constructed were the Tabqa and Keban dams in Syria and Turkey. The Karakaya and Haditha dams were also built from the mid-1960s to the late 1970s in Turkey and Iraq, respectively. The The Turkish nation also had some development projects in its southeast region. As each nation was working towards its personal national development, the Ba'athist governments in Syria and Iraq started to focus on agricultural progress. The projects they embarked on required huge water, such as land reforms and large-scale irrigation projects. Alongside, Turkey also launched the Southeast Anatolia Project, or GAP as known by its Turkish acronym. GAP was announced in the 1980s to boost the hydroelectric power and irrigation of Turkey's poor southeastern regions. This project brought about the construction of 22 dams and 19 power plants all over 9 provinces. The dams were built to prevent flooding and provide irrigation, hydropower, and drinking water to transform the economic situation in the country's southeast for good. Due to these events, Syria and Iraq reported that the Turkish government limited the flow of the Tigris and Euphrates to achieve its goals. However, some biblical scholars believe that the reason why there is a drought in the ancient river of Euphrates and Tigris is because of Christ's second coming. This is because the book of Revelation in the Bible shows proof. After all, the Euphrates River was mentioned. They claim that the end time is near since it was documented in the Bible. According to the book of Revelations, the 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. In a different biblical reference to Revelations 9:14, the book read, "Release the 4 angels who are bound to the great river Euphrates." These were the words said by a voice that John heard from the 4 horns of a golden altar, which was talked about in Exodus 27:2. Demons are known to be fallen angels that are often bound in the chains of gloomy darkness. The Bible also identified these angels bound to the bottom of the great Euphrates River as demonic beings. And surprisingly, the great Euphrates River, which has supposedly helped these fallen angels for thousands of years, has an infamous relationship to human sin. To back up this claim, it is documented that the first murder was allegedly committed near the Garden of Eden, close to the Euphrates region. There have also been speculations about strange voices being heard beneath the drying river. This gives Bible scholars more belief that the phenomenon happening with the Euphrates River is a sign of Christ's second coming. Among these theories, a professor of Bible studies at Shasta Bible College and Graduate School in California, Tom Meyer, also came up with his perspective on the river's drought. He claims that the construction of a dam in Turkey might have caused the river's drought and, at the same time, kicked the biblical prophecy into gear. Tom suggested this speculation by saying, "The construction of a series of dams in Turkey, which culminated with the Great Ataturk Dam, one of the world's largest dams, could be unintentionally paving the way for the fulfillment of biblical prophecy within our lifetimes." He continued by describing the river's positions, saying the Euphrates runs north of Israel, which Professor Meyer suggests is the direction from where Israel's foes, except Egypt, might have attacked from. His theory seemed valid because the Mediterranean Sea stands as a natural barrier to the Holy Land's west, which could have been an enormous problem for Israel's enemies to cross. Also, the east contains miles of desert, hence why Meyer suggested the north. Continues his theory by saying, "The prophecy with which we are concerned relates to the 6th out of 7 bowl judgments recorded in the book of Revelation and will occur shortly before the glorious second coming of Christ, when he slays the Antichrist and establishes his literal 1,000-year reign in Jerusalem. And according to Revelation, the great Euphrates River will literally dry up so that the kings from the east can march their armies toward Jerusalem without hindrance in order to partake in the final great battle against Jerusalem, Armageddon." However, some people believe that the Euphrates River's drought was because none of the projects constructed on the river was done with official coordination. It was also done without acknowledgement of cross-border rights, which makes it unavoidable for these cross-purposes to result in friction between the riparian states. In fact, there was a time when an argument between the government of Syria and Iraq over the Euphrates River almost became a reason for war. Even though relations between Turkey and Iraq have been regarded as hostile by both nations, they still work together when it's time to cooperate on issues about the river. However, the relationship between Syria and Turkey seems to remain tense because both parties regard their water affairs as a matter of national security. Despite the political tension amongst these nations, cooperation is still required to enable these riparian nations to effectively manage the rivers. From 1964, water officials in all three countries began to reach out to one another out of necessity. They began to coordinate development projects and negotiate technical assistance, even when the governmental relations weren't on good terms. Between 1965 and 1974, the water authorities from all three countries established and conducted the Joint Technical Committee. The Joint Technical Committee meetings were held on a when-necessary basis and was done solely to address the needs of each country and ensure stability. But even with the signs of cooperation and coordination established by the water authorities, problems continued. This is because each riparian nation placed its national development projects over the cooperative agreements that were made. Iraq and Syria kept developing extensive irrigation projects and hydropower plants, while Turkey continued to build dams in the Taurus Mountains. These events by all three nations continued to cause strains on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. It continued this way as the tense and unmoving positions later caused them to suspend the talks of cooperation and coordination, eventually dissolving the Joint Technical Committee in the early 1990s. This negligence has resulted in increasing heat waves for several years, and now the drought is in full effect. This year, water reservoirs along the Euphrates, such as the Qadisiyah Lake, showed significantly low water levels. Government reports also warn that the Tigris and Euphrates rivers might go completely dry by 2040. What do you think about the drying up of this river? Let us know in the comments section below.